this is, I wouldn't exactly call it a pandemic project, but we had a lot of time on our hands and we just went for it. José Rivera and I did. And there was so much research to give back to this, to our wonderful community. And this, I should remind everybody, it is not scholarship. It is not scholarship. It may be based on scholarship for the scholars that are involved in it, but this is part of a long tradition of cultural journalism in New Mexico, bilingual cultural journalism that goes way back to the 19th century. And so we honor that tradition. In this anthology, we had to tell our scholars, look, no scholarly jargon, no footnotes, just tell your stories. They're wonderful stories. There are 24 different chapters in this book, and they tell all of the stories of New Mexico. They tell stories from all over the world that pertain to New Mexico in so many different ways. I've got the index down here of everyone that participated, and it's long, and I can't look at it right now. Jose and I will supply some of the chapters. I was down at the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District this morning for I'm on a committee that's involved in long-range drought planning, and one of our authors is the planner from the MRGCD, Yasmin Najmi, who's so good at sharing those stories that go clear back to the days of the Depression. And so we've got a chapter comparing the two high desert cities of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Mendoza, Argentina, that are linked in so many ways concerning acequias. They both have rivers and acequias running through them. There's stories about Spain, there's stories about Mexico, there's stories about the Philippines. So there's so many aspects to this book. We're very, very excited to present it to everybody. It's acequias are in the news this year, big time, especially with all of the disasters. Acequias are resilient. An acequia, some people may think that it's a water channel, but it's really about community. Community begins in New Mexico at the head gates. Traditionally, historically, people would get their water located and flowing before they even built a church in many communities, because you've got to eat. So there's some great stories. One of them's from Iran. There's another one from Yemen that I'll be talking about a little bit tonight. So let me call on Jose. Jose, what excited you the most about doing this this project? You should tell everybody how it began. We decided to tell these stories sitting on the plaza in Valencia, Spain, and it all flows from a very interesting symposium that we went there with our colleagues from Mexico, from Spain, from Chile. There's a great chapter on Chile. Jose, what do you have to add to that brief interview?
Well, sure. Yes, it was in Valencia at the Puerta de los Apóstoles in the plaza there. You know, Enrique and I were there. New Mexico Acequia Association was being honored by the Tribunal de las Aguas de Valencia, the only acequia outside of Spain that was invited to be there for a particular ceremony, an anniversary, which we will talk about. But basically, Enrique and I were there firsthand, so we have an actual personal connection to that location. But there were 22 of us from New Mexico, officers of the New Mexico Acequia Association, and then a few professors like us and from New Mexico State. And of course, people from the different acequias in New Mexico, commissioners and other people, parciantes, who were able to attend. So it was just a spectacular event. And so basically, when we got back from Valencia, after the symposium and all the ceremonies were conducted, Enrique and his son Armando decided to memorialize and to report what had happened. This was a hugely significant event for New Mexico, and being the only acequia from all over the world that was invited to be at what I call the world stage and of the water court of the water tribunal of Valencia. So they decided to put it together in a special issue of the Greenfire Times. And gosh, they got it out in just a few months. My goodness, we were there in September. The special issue came out in February, a few months later. So that was really the impetus, for this book. And Baker Morrow, the series editor for Ancient Garden Landscapes of the Southwest, he's the one that approached Enrique and told him, look, that's wonderful essays that are there. We don't want them to be lost, because those are back issues from some time ago. And that's really what I think Enrique invited me to be part of it. And he even told me, because I told him, well, Enrique, I don't know if I want to get involved in another book. I know they take a long time. And he said, well, no, you're in it, whether you want to be in it or not. And that made reference to the fact that we were both there as a witness to this special event. So that's what brought me into the book.
Yeah, we thought we'd share with you some of the other stuff that we've worked on in the past. There's Jose's foundational book. He is the elder statesman. He is the longtime Acequia scholar of New Mexico and so many different parts of the world. This is where the term Acequia culture came from. A lot of our normal vocabulary in talking about Acequias here, words like water democracy, words like Acequia culture, and there's a whole list that Jose coined. And I keep after him. He says, Enrique, nobody's giving me credit for these things. And I told him, well, when Cervantes, Miguel de Cervantes wrote Don Quixote, he knew it was a success when people forgot all about who wrote it. Everybody in the whole world knew Don Quixote in Spain and the rest of the world. And he was actually very, very pleased that everybody forgot that he wrote it. So I was trying to console Jose. Jose, you invented all this vocabulary. So that's another that's his latest book, where he goes down to research. Who would have thought there'd be acequias in the Philippines, but there are. This is one of the chapters. It's a great chapter. Here's a tropical place with a dry season that's so dry that they need acequias. And there's my contribution to the mix is actually a children's book with the history of the Mora, the amazing system of acequias in the Mora Valley, told through the ancient tale of John the Bear. Back in the day, all the superheroes used to have the same name, John or Jack. And I'm talking about all the European languages. There's no more Batman. There's no Batman yet. There's no Superman. There's no Uber, anything. There's just a bunch of guys named Jack who get the job done. So what I'm going to start off with here is an acknowledgement that water is essential to cultures all over the world. And this is an acknowledgement that of people were managing, they were finding and managing their water, whether or not there were even flowing streams around. In the upper right, you see what we call tinajas, or water basins that are hollowed out. And this is from a very dry area with no streams, the Gran Quivira National Monument. And And I wanted to put a slide up there that many of you are probably familiar with, the terracing and down at Pajarito Springs that you can hike down to from White Rock. There's a trail there. That's one of the channels that took that water out to cobble mulched fields where there are these rocks out in the field, and of course it stays moist under there even though the hot sun comes out. And so this acknowledges the tribes in your area, especially the Tewa tribes coming down as far as Alamo Canyon. That was pretty much their cultural boundary. And the Queres people to the south of there, they were all doing this. And there, of course, is the river deity, the Avanu. There's different ways of pronouncing it. So we always start by saying that no, we are not the first. This is a brief overview before Jose's part. We're talking about Ibero-American water management systems, which are built, which are standing on the shoulders of the ones that were before that. This is water government that's the gift of the Middle East to the world. The dry Mediterranean gave this tradition to the world that we celebrate and that we have survived on here. So now I'll turn it to Jose. This actually comes from his first chapter in the book.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'll start off with what are they? What are acequias? Well, we all know they're physical systems, they're irrigation ditches. But the interesting part of that, especially here in New Mexico and in southern Colorado, one of the few places where this Iberian tradition melded, also incorporated with indigenous systems of the pueblos into a European and Arab connection. We know that the Acequia word itself is derived from an Arabic word, and Enrique will talk about that a little more. But basically, yes, they are hand carved on the land. So our focus here in this chapter is that they are historic, yes, but they're also working landscapes. So they're more than just relics from the past or memories of the past. They actually support a still living water culture here in New Mexico and in southern Colorado. And here we see an example of that in a couple of these slides. But I'll start off with the one on the upper left-hand corner there. They're called the presa of rocks and brush at Jemez Springs. Now, this is foundational. In fact, when I give talks to school kids, I use slides like this and I ask them, do you know the birthplace of your community? And some of them will say, well, maybe the church. And I say, well, yes, churches were important in the early settlement days, but the first public works project was to build the community acequia. And within that, what you first needed was to divert water. You needed to move water out of the stream, as in this one in Jemez Springs, and put it into a canal, an acequia. So here we see just, locally available materials. Native Americans did this as well. Just boulders, rocks, trunks of trees and brush and so forth. And that's enough to get water elevated. You can see that higher up in the slide there, there's a pool of water, and that's the one that is used to divert. So that was task number one in establishing community along the Rio Grande and its tributaries, was to find a place in the river where you could divert water. Usually a bend in the river might be a good spot, but there were others. Okay, then what happens, of course, once you put water into the canal and you put it into the field, we see the lower slide there, the bottom of that happens to be the Acequia de Corrales, where I had a 5-acre farm there, and early on, and I lived there for many years, 20 plus years, and this was right in pretty much near my house. It wasn't mine, but it was a larger field than I had, but you can see the water there, and it's important to note that it comes from a presa, but it operates by way of gravity flow. You know, that's an important point because, you know, many of us who write about Acequias, we refer to them as being very sustainable. That's the gravity flow is one of the features, or actually could be the main feature that makes it sustainable, because water is diverted from a spring like the one up there in the slide from Chemis only when it's available. You know, in times of drought or low flow, you're not going to get water into your compuerta or the head gate that's right there next to that presa, okay, or any other. So it's very automatically can adjust to the seasonal changes and to the conditions in certainly nowadays in climate change and prolonged drought. If there's no water in the stream, or there is not going to be any water to irrigate that field at Corrales or in Santa Cruz in the other slide either. That's near Española, Santa Cruz, you know. So they're sustainable in that sense. They automatically kind of, they had a shut-off valve, so to speak, you know, when times of drought. Okay, but they also have intangible features too. Here in this slide, you see the bottom left, there's a limpia going on. You know, you probably, many of you, all of you probably familiar with this, the annual ditch cleaning, La Limpia de la Acequia, it's called. Okay, and you see that there's a little boy there and a younger people and so forth. It's very much of a family affair. You know, women participate, men participate, of course, and children can participate in many of these communities. So it's intergenerational in that sense. And that comes from one of our chapters at Placitas, written by Donatella Davanzo, the photographer anthropologist who writes a chapter in the book. The upper one is another kind of the intangible heritage, because the you know, the Acequias, you know, organize, they defend their water, they are very active, and they have this fierce, you know, kind of feeling and statement, you know, about el agua es la vida, water is life, as indicated there. So they meet every year at an annual convention that they call it Congreso, the Congress of all Acequias, you know, statewide. And you see some of the signs there. The first one you can see there is from the Embudo Valley Acequia Association, and there's the Mora Valley Acequia Association, the Rio de Chama Acequia Association, of course, the Taos Valley Acequia Association, and many, many others. And that's part of the government of Acequias. They established this organization at the state level, and it trickles down in structure to the local level as well. And that's very important too about these Acequias, that they're autonomous, you know, they're self-governments in water management, and makes them unique in that sense too. They have certain operating principles that are important, and sharing water is one of them, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But here's it gets more into the New Mexico's Acequia heritage in a global context. And I'll turn it back over to Enrique for this one.
Yeah, thanks, Jose. We should point out that our nomination is all ready to go. We hope maybe someday the United States will join UNESCO again, and as soon as it does, we're ready to go with this. I'm going to give a little global overview because you know, all that any of us knew was that, oh well, Acequia is an Arabic word that means it could mean a person bearing water. It could mean a water channel, but it's actually not from Arabic. It's from an area called Arabia Felix, the Roman province of Arabia Felix, which is the only happy place in the Arabian Peninsula because it gets a little bit of rain there. And this, of course, is the area called Yemen right now. And it used to be called the Kingdom of Sabah. The Sabaean people lived there, and they made it into the Bible where the biblical name for Sabah is Sheba. And we've all heard of the legendary queen. And the further into this we got, we learned that the direct lineage of our water heritage in New Mexico, the global lineage comes from Arabia Felix, The second caliphate was based in Damascus, but they maintained a nobility in the richest area, agriculturally speaking, the breadbasket, which was Yemen. And when the caliphate crashed politically, the nobility fled where? To Al-Andalus, to Cordoba, and from there to Murcia, from there to all of their walled cities in the peninsula of Spain, in the Iberian Peninsula. And of course, Valencia is one of those. And then from there to Nueva España, New Spain, and then to Nuevo Mexico. So let's take a look at some of the waterworks in Yemen very briefly. This Sud Marib Dam was, it approached the size of Cochiti Dam. It was about 2/3 as massive as the Cochiti Dam. This is just the spillway. And it was right on the edge of the empty quarter where they may have one rain event a year or a couple, and it would capture all of it. And it had a massive irrigation district down from it. And there was a huge flood in the 8th century, but this thing operated for 1,000 years. And you'll notice some of the other ways that they capture water there. And unfortunately, this the Saudis decided that this was a military target. They decided that schools were military targets. They were bombing reservoirs, and the United Nations Security Council did a resolution. They didn't even need to name names. Everybody knew what was happening, that the water infrastructure in this ancient place was getting attacked. Even this amazing Red Sea side of Yemen that has these terraces and just captures and uses every single little drop. And you should see what they produce there. This is where coffee comes from, folks. Figs, all of the Mediterranean stuff, and corn, of course, comes in with the exchange from the Americas. Mangoes, grapes, everything, dates, even wheat, and all of the stone fruit, the wheat. I said wheat already, but just to give you an idea. So now we're in Spain really quickly, and this is one of the more than a dozen, they call them jardines de aclimatización, acclimatization gardens. So the tomato, for instance, didn't go straight to Italy. It went to Spain. All of these plants of the Columbian exchange went to Spain, and horticulturalists adapted them and selected seeds and made them fit into Mediterranean agriculture and all the different ecosystems that you have. This one survived. This one is Aranjuez. It survives to this day. It's a huge preserve. Philip II started it, and it's probably the fanciest acequias you're ever going to see. Up in the upper left is the Acequia Madre. It has head gates made of bronze and marble. The royals who lived in the palace there, the palace is okay, it's a royal palace, whatever, but in the museum, they have these crazy golden boats. I guess they were reading about Cleopatra, and there is about a mile, maybe a couple of miles of navigable area in their Acequia Madre. And if you can imagine these golden boats going back and forth with playing chamber music and having feasting and drinking and dancing, you'll get an idea of this amazing place. So now we're going to shift to, we're following the trail over to Spain. The first allies of the Spanish were the Tlaxcaltecas, and there were some battles with the Spanish, and they figured, why are we fighting each other when the enemy lives on an island in the middle of the Lake of Mexico? This is the aberration. These are the totalitarians of Mesoamerica. They have a theocratic state that just insists on gobbling up all of our young people every year, and we're just going to ally ourselves with you. And that painting is a representation of their they were commissioned to settle northern New Spain and to bring the agriculture as far up as Santa Fe, New Mexico, which they take they take credit for founding Santa Fe. It's amazing. You go down to Tlaxcala and they have the documentation, and they say Oñate was over in Oquehuingue de San Juan, but we were setting up the agriculture. The Basques that settled in Mexico, they were just interested in mining, and we're the ones that opened the Acequias. We're the ones that brought the seeds, and so now we're doing pretty well on time. We're gonna make some time for your questions and everything, but we got to talk about this homecoming, this amazing experience that we had in the middle of the province of Valencia. It's a beautiful city, an ancient city that was built by the Muslims, and this water court has been in continuous function. It's functioned continuously without interruption since the 10th century, because the water has to keep flowing and you have to keep solving your problems. It doesn't matter if a sultan is at the reins. It doesn't matter if what kind of warlord or generalissimo or king or whatever. You've got to survive, and the water has to be respected. So Jose has tons of stories about Valencia. So go for it, Jose. This is all unrehearsed, by the way. We love talking about this stuff, and we call it tag team. Jose, you're it.
Okay. Yes, somebody asked, a question here in the chat room early on about what was the name of the symposium that brought us there in the first place. Well, it was called Sociedad y Regadío, is the short title, Society and Irrigation. And then the subtitle was Homenaje a Professor Thomas F. Glick, a tribute to Professor Thomas F. Glick. He's one of our colleagues for Enrique and myself. Of course, he was there too. He wrote the book. He wrote the book about society and irrigation of Valencia, basically during medieval period. Okay, so, and that book is in English, by the way. Here it is, the Tribunal de las Aguas de la Vega de Valencia, and also the Consejo de Hombres Buenos de Murcia. They are the two water institutions from Eastern Spain that are listed in the UNESCO program for Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity. Okay, and they are the ones that invited specifically the New Mexico Acequia Association, as I said earlier, the only Acequia outside of Spain that was invited to be part of their ceremony for their 5th anniversary of having been inscribed in the UNESCO list. The symposium was international. There were, I believe, some 60 countries represented from throughout the world at the nearby university, the Politécnico, the MIT, if you will, of Valencia. And so, yes, despite 60 other countries being at the symposium that was going on at the same time, New Mexico was the only one that was included and incorporated into the ceremonies of the 5th anniversary. And they recognized the New Mexico Acequia Association for their work at defending the water rights, water for the people, and so they brought him in and they said, gosh, we'd like to have you here, be our guests, for this ceremony. They hold a water court. It's the oldest judicial institution in all of Europe that still holds a court, once a week, every Thursday at noon. right there in that plaza. So between the Rio Turia and the 7 acequias that are represented around the river, that fountain there, water fountain, between the water fountain and the next building, which is the Catedral de Valencia, the Cathedral of Valencia. And this is the side view, actually, not the front, but it's important because that's where they hold the water court. Underneath those wooden doors, you can probably see them there at the base of the building. That's called the door of the Apostles, Puerta de los Apóstoles. And you'll see a more close-up view, in fact, the bottom right-hand corner, and I'll finish with that because that tells the rest of the story. And of course, this is in the book. All of these things, stories are in the book. So you can look them up for in detail. There they are. Part of the honor was that they gave a medal, Medalla de Honor, the Medal of Honor, which they just do it like every once in a while, in a great while. And they gave it to the New Mexico Acequia Association. And also they had the Secretario of the New Mexico Acequia Association, Don Bustos. Some of you probably know him. He runs the Santa Cruz Farms. So he's a farmer. He's an irrigation and acequia farmer in Santa Cruz, very successful. He's a model family farm. There he is. They've already given him the medal. Those are the water judges. Now, they're more than just judges. They're irrigators. They're acequieros. They're the equivalent of our mayordomos and comisionados, in New Mexico. They are irrigators themselves, heading up each of the major acequias in Valencia and Murcia. They're all represented there. They're looking, they're viewing, and witnessing. Don Bustos, Secretario of the New Mexico Acequia Association, signing the book that they call the Libro de Oro, the Book of Gold. And they do that only when they're honoring somebody. The head person comes over and memorializes their visit there and what they thought about the whole experience. And that's what Don Bustos is doing. So I'll turn it back over to Enrique.
Yeah. This porch here and the Thursday is very, very significant. It dates back to the time when there were Jewish Jewish guilds and craftspeople, but there were also some farmers there. There were Muslim farmers, there were Christian farmers, and so they didn't want to hold the court on anybody's holy day. And they didn't want to have it inside the cathedral. They respected all of those traditions and what all of those different people were contributing to the greater good. So it's very, very symbolic. Another interesting feature is that they don't write anything down. The judges listen. They know it's codified law. It's not their courts don't work like the courts here. And they confer, the witnesses present their cases, and they decide right on the spot which way the case is going, and they will give the infraction, the fine right there to the guy who loses, or you can see them losing and winning and getting the fines levied on them just right there. And there's a guy taking some notes on it, but it's all an oral tradition, which is really, really fascinating.
Yeah, I should add, Enrique, that that's exactly what happened in this water court. Yes, irrigators who violate the rules, like taking water out of turns or flooding the neighbors' fields, so forth, they violate the water rules, which are the same ones here, what we call the reglas de las acequias.
Yeah.
Okay, they are brought before their peers. Those judges are irrigators themselves. Okay, so they're brought before their peers, the judges, and they are called the denunciados. Basically, there's an official there that calls for denunciados from the certain acequia, and they come forward. The water guard brings the person, and in New Mexico, we have a similar word. People who violate the rules here are called delincuentes. Delinquents. I mean, nobody wants to be a delinquent for very long, right? So, or a denunciado in Valencia. And that's what they do. They hear the case orally. They make the decision on the spot, so they're known for their transparency. It's done in front of the public. And gosh, that was quite a public that day, Enrique, you remember?
Yeah.
There were hundreds of people surrounding that space between that water fountain and the cathedral. It's larger than what it looks there, but that was full of people from all over the world.
It's actually
Many of them were tourists, but also people from Spain and Valencia itself, local people. And of course, the 22 of us from New Mexico, we were there, but we were in the center stage of it, essentially, you know. We were brought into the perimeter of that opening there, the door, you know, and they gave us an explanation beforehand. The lawyer for the tribunal, you know, gave us an explanation as to what was going to be happening and did it privately for us. Basically, we were just standing there, but we were surrounded by these hundreds of tourists and other spectators. The cameras were flashing, videos were running, you know, kids were on the shoulders of some of the adults there. And it was an amazing experience that we will never forget. Yeah. And that's exactly what Don Bustos' chapter in our book is. He has a personal perspectives, basically his reflections and memory of the experience that he said was once in a lifetime. He wrote that and has the chapter in the book.
Yeah. So we're going to jump south. It's actually south and a little bit west of Valencia. This Valencia, this amazing place where even in medieval times, even the people, even the farmers wore silk, and they tried to pass laws against them in Madrid that only royals can wear silk, but there was a whole silkworm industry going on there. So these are very, very proud people. They have their own language. We're down in Murcia, which again is a medieval Muslim city. It's on a plain, and the irrigation goes everywhere, and this is called this wheel up here is called a noria, and noria in New Mexico means water wheel, but it means the little wheel on your well, and you turn it and you bring up the bucket. Well, this is a large noria. There's some huge norias down in Syria and Egypt and places like that. And what it does is it raises, just on the power of the water going by underneath it, it raises the water and lifts it a good 12 feet so that it can irrigate a whole other area of this amazing valley. And so when they would have sieges and wars and stuff like that, they didn't need a moat because all they had to do is turn on the Acequias, and it made a big, it put all this walled city in the middle of a big pond, and everybody would get all bogged down trying to attack the place. So just a fascinating area. You recall the presa that Jose showed us from the Jemez River. Well, this is the one on a large river, the Segura River, that flows through Murcia, and it's amazing the milling technology. We could go on all day and all night about all of this, and they even beat flax. You have to beat flax if you're going to make linen. You have to pound minerals to make gunpowder. And so the milling technology is just superb over there. So we can get to your questions. We're gonna just show you how deep this goes. We thought they were Arabic words, but they're words from the Sabaean language, which is no longer spoken except for place names and family names down in Yemen, because Islam was really the religion of peace when it came to this area. There were wars going on between the Christians and the Jews and across the Red Sea, and so peace came with Islam. And so the sacred language of Islam is, of course, Arabic, and now everyone speaks Arabic there. So all of these words come from there. There's many hundreds of words from Arabic that made it into the Spanish language. So that's just a few. The list goes on and on. A lot of these are used in New Mexico. You see words like Wadi. Wadi means river or wash. Guadalupe means hidden river. All these Acequia terms, and of course the agriculture. This is candy is an Arabic word. The first confections were made by Arabic-speaking people. Azúcar is Arabic. Berenjena. What are some of the other ones? We use albaricoque in New Mexican Spanish. Alcachofa. An important crop that a lot of people overlook, alfalfa, that's an Arabic word. All of these things, algodón, cotton, arroz, and on and on and on. There's hundreds of them, which returns us to this amazing volume with, we could tell you the stories about Chile till midnight. We learned all about the wines, all about how they had to rekindle the entire Acequia system in Chile after the breakup of the big farms. But we'll refer you to this book. We got while we do the questions, we'll just leave this on here. We really went after financing. Our editor, our managing editor, Sonia Dickey is on board with us this afternoon. And boy, we worked hard to keep the price of a fat book as far down as we can get it, so it could really be for the people. And so you might want to, if you're interested in the book and you order it before the end of April, you can get 20% off of the price that it's at. So it's just our way of returning these stories to the community. And so what are some of the other questions? I can't see the chat.
Enrique, before we get that, we should recognize we were able to keep the price of the book down through UNM Press. They allowed 90 to 100 colorful photographs that you've seen here and many, many others that we're not able to present today. That was really spectacular that they agreed to do that. And we also received a donation or fund from the Center for Regional Studies at the University of New Mexico. And we acknowledge them right at the copyright page of the book. So yeah, go ahead, Enrique, and maybe start with the questions and see what we can address.
We'll stay here as long as you guys want. If there's some oral ones, or I can't see the chat, so maybe Jessica can field some for us, and she'll give you our connections, because all those papers are still online of that conference that we went to. There's tons of reading you could do.
Enrique, sure. There are a few questions that have been entered here in the chat. Let me go back and find them. Sorry, I just changed my screen view, so I lost it. Give me just a moment here. Here's one. Is that vocabulary list in the book? The one that you were just showing about the Arabic words?
Oh, yeah. It sure is, yeah.
Great. Okay, perfect. And then the question that preceded that was, what actions can be taken to preserve our Acequia culture in New Mexico? What can the State Historic Preservation Office do, or local governments?
Actually, water is we're in the middle of a drought. We just experienced a major natural disaster through fire. The beautiful Acequia system of the Mono valleys was, probably half of them were silted in. Some of them were completely destroyed. And they aren't even going to be able to plant this year. So there's a massive support effort going on in the legislature right now, and it's there's so many people that want this water. People assume that flood irrigation is wasting the water. Actually, only probably less than 10% is actually used by plants and transmitted by transpiration to the air. And where does the rest of it go? It goes down into the aquifer. And the people who have tracked this are over at the at the NMSU farm over in Alcalde. That's where the cutting edge Acequia research is happening. Is right down the hill from you guys and up towards the Lamadrid. So the politics of water in New Mexico really is fascinating, and there's so many golf courses and businesses that really want it, and we fight to keep it on the land, to keep this place green, to keep the city of Albuquerque green. Down in Mexico, El Paso, Juarez used to be as green as Albuquerque, but they put all their water down the bottom line and shipped it downriver from town. And Juarez is an unlivable city at this point, and it used to be a beautiful oasis city. So we could.
Enrique, if I could address that question, two things. That the question was, what can people do, like our audience here and others, to support Acequias? Two things: follow the legislative agenda and other workshops of the New Mexico Acequia Association. They are really incredibly creative about finding ways of supporting Acequias, and every year they put in legislative bills to create more funding for the Acequia Community Ditch Fund, for example, the disaster relief program, legislation that's being debated right now, which is probably going to pass, okay, as a temporary relief until the federal funds come in. Okay, that's one thing. Just follow the New Mexico Acequia Association. They have a terrific website. Just type in their name and you'll get their website and a Facebook page. And they'll tell you exactly what they're doing. They have activities year round. They're open to the public. There's some here nearby many times. Okay, then the second thing you can do is support the Acequia family farms. The Acequia family farms. Farms like Alejandro Lopez, the slide that we showed up there is one of the working landscape examples. Okay, he produces corn, beets, squash, chili, cucumbers, and a variety of other products. Okay, then there's also Don Bustos, the one that signed that Libro de Oro. He's got the Santa Cruz farms, and they're just a few blocks from each other on a road, I believe, called El Llano in the Española Valley at Santa Cruz. So support the Acequia family farms. They're the backbone. They depend on Acequia water. Without the Acequia, there would be no farms there. So support the family farms.
Yeah, farmers markets. There's a whole list of reasons why, even though you don't have one in your backyard, like I do, like Jose used to, it benefits everybody to keep this water flowing and to keep it around and to keep it out of huge developments. We can't just keep making more and more and more housing developments because there's not even any water for that. I mean, there are limits to things like water. It's not an infinite thing. It's finite. It's renewable. But we're all part of this story.
Enrique and Jose, there's another question in the chat. It says there is a very interesting book called, and I'm sorry if I pronounced this wrong, Mayordomo, about the Acequias in northern New Mexico. Is this an accurate depiction of the culture?
I would say here's Stanley Crawford, a wonderful writer, a wonderful neighbor who hires half of the kids in Dixon to help him with his garlic farm. He's an activist nationally in favor of small farming and farmers markets and getting good getting good food that doesn't come from thousands of miles away. It comes from just down the next valley from you. It's really, really important. He's a wonderful writer in his own right, and boy, people have scrutinized that book, and he gets it. He's a longtime resident of the Dixon area, and he's got. That's the great thing about Acequia culture. People people can learn it. It goes between cultures. There's no, you can't say it belongs to one people, it belongs to some other kind of people. It belongs to everybody. And
if I might add, Enrique, Stanley Crawford, as I understand, was one of the founders of the Santa Fe Farmers Market in the very early days and got it a lot of publicity. Between him and the board of directors and other activists there, they were able to secure a major grant from the Ford Foundation. I remember that very well. That it really got the Santa Fe market, put it on the map. And that's where people like Don Bustos and Alejandro Lopez and all of these other family farmers that are based on Acequia technology of irrigation, that's where they sell their products. So that's another place where people can help out. Because it's a farm to table. If you look at it, it's literally, it comes off of those small Acequia farms. They're a scarce commodity these days, as we know. And small farmers, farm to table.
let's hear it for UN Press. That's another title in our list. We have an amazing list on water, on the river itself, historical photographs of the river, the hydrology, the history, and several books on Acequias now, including Estevan Arellano's book, and so the list just keeps growing because it's such an important story to tell the world. So UN Press is part of that, of getting that story out there. So we're very proud to be part of it.
Thank you. We've got one last comment here in the chat box from Carmen. We had an acequia in our backyard in Santa Cruz, and this acequia fed our fruit trees, our planting, and our fresh water to swim. It was a wonderful experience. I remember having to clean the ditch every year. Our ditch was the best in Santa Cruz.
Great. Thumbs up.
All right. Well, that takes us to 8 o'clock. Do either of you have any closing comments you'd like to make? It looks like we don't have any other questions in the chat box.
I would say these things are close to where we live. They're close to where you live. Just talk to people, go to farmers markets. It's a great place to meet everybody that's part of this economy. It's a growing economy nationwide. When we run out of gas and oil, the farmers markets and locally produced food is going to be more and more and more important as we move into as we move into a world without as much fossil fuel to keep it running.
And that's certainly a priority of the Acequia family farms and the organization at the local, regional, and the state level that we've been mentioning. They want to keep culture in agriculture, basically, put the culture back into agriculture. That keep farmland, preserve farmland and sustain. And as Enrique was saying, during the food pandemic and so forth and shortages, so forth, we saw that, with food products and vegetables having to be imported, national highways and international, ways as well from far afield. And here we have a supply of agricultural products that are can be, cut down on the fuel costs of these transportation systems and get their, farm to table again.
Thank you. And guys, I'm sorry, we did get one last minute question right as I said we didn't have any other questions. Would you mind spending a minute just speaking about water brokers?
Oh, yeah, there are, we call them all kinds of different names, including sharks. These are the people who trade water rights. Water rights are more and more and more valuable. And even if you're going to start a new Lotta Burger in Taos, fast food restaurant, you just can't hook up. You need to buy water rights on the market to start your business. If it involves any water at all, and depending on the supply of municipal water and whatnot, but there's a burgeoning water market out there, and the people running it look at the obituaries every day from all around northern New Mexico, and they call up all those families, and they say they talk to the relatives, and they said, how we know it's very sad for you right now, but how do you like a big chunk of money? And this is happening right and left, but there have been a series of interesting court decisions in New Mexico, Supreme Court decisions that have affirmed the right of Acequias to protest out of system water transfers. And they can also approve them, but they have a say. Acequia associations did not used to have a say. And there's some really egregious examples right in the Española Valley where water was getting transferred up to housing developments on the top of that black mesa where all the petroglyphs were. There was a fellow in town from a multi-generational family who wanted that water, and there was a protest that made it all the way to the Supreme Court, and it was decided in favor of the acequia, because they often compare it to a wheel with spokes in it, and you can only take out so many spokes before the entire wheel collapses. And so in my case here in Albuquerque's North Valley, there was a case of back in 2020, there was 15 acres of water rights in the South Valley. There were two sisters who were getting sweet talked by one of these brokers who would have given them a chunk of cash and immediately sold it for much more money. And we protested. We filed our protest with the state engineer. We got great legal advice from the Acequia Association, and every step in the way, because there can be countersuits. It gets dangerous out there. But we had great advice, and in the meantime, people talked to those two sisters, and they said, we need that water in this part of the valley, in between San Felipe Pueblo, between Algodones and Isleta. Every drop of water that goes out of that Albuquerque stretch is going to dry up this place, because it's going to go away and it's not going to come back. And so they showed them how they can lease the water, and instead of getting a huge chunk of money that they would pay exorbitant taxes on, they're leasing it. Their fields are fallow, but they're still fertile, and they still can be used in the future sometime maybe, but they're getting the benefit of a check in the mail every month by leasing the precious water rights that they have and keeping Albuquerque green, because you can look at cities all over northern Mexico that used to be oasis cities, and they ask us, how did you do it? How did you do it? And we tell them, well, it wasn't, it's almost by accident that we were able to preserve it, but what's here is worth defending, and we won that one, and so did the owners of the water who were able to lease it.
Thank you both again so much. That was a wonderful talk, and I'll follow up with you by email so I can get your honorariums over to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Good night.
All right.